My name is John Coleman, and I'm Irish, as you can tell from my accent. I live about a half an hour's drive from Oxford in England, a lovely part of the world. And I'm here to talk about maybe something that's needed, a management revolution. There have been a number of revolutionary movements, including Beyond Budgeting, for example, which is a wonderful piece of work supported by Bjart Boynes. And you've got Rendan Hay as well from Hire. And there's lots of really cool things happening in the world. And what I'm trying to do today is maybe pull a few things together just to kind of address maybe some gaps that there might be when people try to achieve more effectiveness in their organizations. You might have heard of ambidexterity. Ambidexterity is where you can use your left hand and your right hand equally. I also use it as a metaphor for balancing the short term and the long term. We need to get through the short term to get to the long term, but we often forget about the long term, and it can lead to short sightedness and maybe looking at what's really urgent all the time. And it can result in situations where we don't really have the environment that we need to be truly effective. I happen to be a trainer on a few things with scrum.org, prokanban.org. I'm a less friendly Scrum trainer as well. That's actually a thing. It's not a joke. That sounds funny though. And I'm also an Agile Kata pro trainer. That's a kind of a variant of Toyota improvement and coaching Kata. Jochen Krebs came up with that a few years ago. And I got involved with Kanban Guide, and I published Complexity and republished it again in 2022. So delighted to talk to you today. Please ask questions as you go along. You can feel free to just pop a comment in on whichever channel you're on, and I will address the question as soon as the next suitable opportunity. So I'm curious from these images here, which of these three would you say is the odd one out? So you've got three images of people playing ping pong or table tennis, whatever you want to call it. Which one of these might be the odd one out? Does anyone think? Put your answers in the comments. Some people enjoying themselves. Nice to keep fit, isn't it? While so we shouldn't leave it all to maybe just 1 week of the year. We should try to keep fit all the time. It's something that I struggle with myself, but it's something we should all strive for. Really curious which of these you think is the odd one out of these photographs. So in one case, we have a guy who seems to be in some kind of sports venue on the right-hand side. Thank you, Andrew. Seems to be working on a table and getting rather hot and sweaty. And yeah, in the middle, they seem to have a laptop on a table. There are three people there, but that's not what I'm looking for. Um, and there's two people playing on the left-hand side. It looks like on the left-hand side, thank you, LinkedIn user, middle one, Andrew, as well. It looks like the one in the middle is like a table tennis or ping pong table at work. Whether that's something made up by someone who just brought the little nets in from some store in town, or whether it was actually fitted in the company. It seems to be a place where you can have a bit of fun at work, and they seem to be very happy in the middle of that room. So they seem to be having a meeting and doing ping pong. So yeah, we're going to come back to that later on and why that might be relevant to this discussion. If you go a bit further, imagine you also had beer on tap at work as well, and they've got this scheme at work where you can basically learn 4 hours a week. You can go on YouTube, and you can open books, and nobody will bat an eyelid because we have some scheme at work where we can do all the learning that we want, and we've got these lovely corporate values really prominently sitting on the wall. I'm curious what you think about that as well. So Ping pong tables, beer on tap at work, learning 4 hours a week, lovely values on the wall. What would you think about that? What would you think about that kind of an environment? How would you feel maybe about working in an environment like that? I have seen some places where they had a sports center kind of next to the venue. That's really not what I'm talking about. It's when they're actually doing it actually in the workplace itself. Let me dig a bit deeper, maybe give you some more little hints here. So, what emotional reactions might you have if you had the company had the Employer of the Year award? And not only do we have the people in the second image there playing table tennis together, but we've got people who kind of made up their own table tennis ping pong table using little things hanging around the table around the room. They kind of made up their own way of doing it. And we seem to have people as well on the far left as well uh, that seem to be actually they seem to have a laptop actually on the table tennis. So Suganya, thank you very much. Learning 4 hours a week, the org values the growth of their employees. There's a table tennis table in my co-working hub. Yeah, in a co-working hub, it's probably not so problematic, I suppose, because you got multiple companies coming together. But often it can be a bit of a trap. Um, a company wants to give across the impression that it's a nice environment. We have free food. We do all these wonderful things for employees. But actually, if you play ping pong on that table, your card might be marked. And when they're looking at who's going to be promoted or maybe even removed in a given year, that might be in the back of some people's minds. And I've seen this happen a few times. I've even seen situations where people have been warned not to have a meeting in a big area where there are those tables, even though it is a big natural area with lots of windows and lots of um, real estate to put whiteboards up and things like that, because it's kind of a trap in some companies. So that's something I just wanted to bring up with you, and I'm curious if that's something that you've come across yourself as well. And I'm wondering how safe you'd feel um, doing that. So I'm curious, would you have a meeting on the ping pong table, or would you actually start playing ping pong in this area in a company where it's this is their own dedicated space? It's not like a shared space amongst many other companies. Curious what you think about that. Or how about because you're able to enjoy yourself so much at work, let's have some extra stretch in our goals. And people getting tired. Stretch goals kind of wind me up a little bit. I do understand the idea of goals, and for agility to work really, really well, we need to avoid keeping everyone ultra busy because we need time to think. We need time to help each other. We need time to be ourselves so that we can be creative and be our full proper selves and not suffer what's known as moral injury, where you don't do the job that you could do, the job that you're well able to do, because you're not given enough time to do what you need to do because too many things are given to the team. So this can be a bit of a trap, the known as the utilization trap. Thank you, Anil, for your answers, and thank you, Saganya. Or if you hear, for example, someone saying, "We're all psychologically safe in this room." As soon as I hear someone saying something like that, I know we're not safe. Someone had to say it. It's kind of like in an English football league where the chairman of a football club comes out to defend a suffering manager of the club because the team isn't performing well and saying we fully back our manager, can you really be so sure about anything in life other than we know we're going to die and we have to pay our taxes? And so when we hear people protesting too much, as Shakespeare would say, it's a kind of a sign that maybe all is not as transparent as maybe we would like it to be. This is something I've actually heard a few times in companies. Or how about, can we have more velocity? We're all machines and we can deliver more velocity. I trained a lady in Austria a few years ago and I was very impressed by her. She was approached by a director, and the director said to her, "I'm not very happy with the velocity from your team." She was in a bunch of teams on the same product. So she went back to her own team and she said, "I'm not trying to be conceited or deceitful here. I just want to do an experiment here about we're getting a complaint about how much velocity we have from this director, whereas director is a very senior person in the company." And she said, "From now on, I want you to add 5 story points to every single item." And the team did that. And then 3 months later, the same director came to her and asked her, well, how are things going? And then he made comments that actually the velocity was much better now. Congratulations, well done. And then she told the director what she had done, and he never asked for velocity again. I had a case in the company last year as well where the velocity doubled the previous year, but when I actually looked at their flow, the amount of valuable items being delivered actually halved. So they were over declaring their delivery by 4x. So we see this happening a lot, don't we? And I wish it didn't happen as much. Or how about this? Build it and they will come. Let's deliver these things. Let's deliver these great ideas. But modern product developers know that you should really try to acquire evidence if you don't have evidence that this idea should be built. And you can do that with really cheap experiments. Sometimes it's so cheap to build something, you can just build something and that's fine. If the customers are banging the door down, of course, build it. They might still not know what they want, but there's more evidence that we might be on the right track here. But what can happen sometimes is you might have a very good idea, but actually there isn't really enough evidence that we can harvest the value from that idea. And it could actually turn out that we have got the right business problem. We have got the right metrics in terms of how we know we're winning. We are targeting the right people. We are targeting the right outcomes for those people and benefits of those people. And we even have the right solutions for those people, but maybe they want it for free. And unless we're Google, that's going to be kind of a difficult thing for us as a company. So it's very sensible to do discovery and to interlace that as well with delivery. I'm not talking about discovery first and then you hand it over to the delivery guys later. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about interlacing. And Scrum.org is a very nice class for doing that. Actually, professional Scrum at UX, where they do a very good job of actually packaging the two of those together. But I see this a lot also. And when people are asked to build it, do they come and do we check? Do we actually check that the customer actually wanted that thing? Do we go and measure, and then if we didn't hit the bullseye, do we then tweak to try to hit the bullseye a little bit better? Maybe try to get it right the second time at least. So these are things that I see a lot. I'm curious if you see this a lot too. So my question for you is, the work environment that you're in, do you feel that it's really set up for timely, humane effectiveness? Effectiveness doing the right thing, humane doing it in such a way where it's a fulfilling place to work and people are treated like people. There's a joke, you call me a resource, I call you an overhead. And of course, doing that in a timely fashion, because it's all very well to be effective, but we need to be doing so in a timely way. You might say you want to use agility if that's what you do in your company, or it might be product management, or it could be ambidexterity. So, do you feel that you have a work environment that's really set up for timely human effectiveness? That's my question for you. There are some gaps, and I want to show you some of those. At least this is my perception of the gaps that are there with top management. I'm going to talk about three of these gaps today. There are five in total. Numbers are infinite, so I'm sure we'll think of a sixth and seventh at some point, but there's five fairly obvious ones sticking out after looking at over 80 engagement models that are out there, 80. And there's some weeks there's two coming out in a week, and I have to check out what they're doing and see what they're saying and so on. But the five gaps that I perceive start with number one. We do agility in teams, but we don't align the workflows, processes, and systems to work well with those teams. Long story short, top management are asking teams to be agile or in some shape or form, or lean, or whatever your top thing is, but there's no real change of behavior at a senior level. In a measurement case study I did a number of years ago, I checked how convinced employees were that executives knew what the problems were with delivery of value. And at the start of my measurement period, it was a 9-month measurement period, 70% of people were convinced that executives knew what the problems were, and about the same number of people were convinced that the executives were doing something about both those problems that were affecting delivery. And then I measured it every couple of months over a 9-month period. And then what I observed is a trend over time where the answer to the first question increased in percentage terms, where now a higher percentage, maybe 75% of employees were convinced that top management knew what the issues were with impeding delivery and so on. But only 20% of the people now believed that top management were doing anything about it, because they were turning up at something like the equivalent of a sprint review in Scrum, for example, and saying, well done, everybody. Well, congratulations, fantastic. But any of the issues that were raised in terms of trying to improve the environment where agility could grow, they were kind of falling aside, if you like. They were not they weren't being followed through. So that's the first gap. The second gap is the distance between the teams and the customers. The longer the distance, the less the people in the teams can relate to the customer, and the less they can really appreciate the distinction between delivering outputs and achieving outcomes with the customer and also with the organization. The third gap is thinking that everything is predictive, that we have everything is certain, and of course we know we've got an uncertain world. There are two other topics that I won't be addressing today. One of them is treating people as resources. That's a bit of a gap. And I have some content on that I can talk about in another talk if people are interested. And the fifth gap that I won't be talking about today is inflicting help on teams, but not being open to change ourselves as top management. So I'm going to talk about the first three of these issues today. Okay, so if we dig a bit deeper, if we want to really deal with agility in teams, but if we want to kind of get away from that situation where we're just kind of waving the magic wand and hoping that everything will work out. Well, actually, if you want to actually address that, we need to become what I call culture gardeners, where we're metaphorically watering, feeding, weeding, cultivating, and adapting the environment so that agility can grow. So if we need to demonstrate compliance, we might have compliance people in our company, in our organization. We need to prove that we're compliant, and that's important. We need to stay within the law and all these kind of things. Can we find ways of working that are more amenable? And in top management, are we open to making that a standard thing rather than that being a discussion, negotiation in every single team in your organization to discover how to do this? Can we make this easier? Can we declutter, refactor, simplify workflows, processes, and systems? And can we do this on as a regular habit, actually? So if you think of yourself as a culture and climate gardener, the general idea is that you're trying to foster others and the organization to rise to their highest heights, and you're trying to help ensure that good agility grows. So I have an acronym for you, and one of them is to grow, which is try to get yourself energized. As flight attendants say, you need to put on your own mask first. It's very difficult to energize and inspire others if you're not really energized yourself. You need to rouse and inspire others by cooperatively setting and adjusting the direction of travel and the next steps. And you need to be doing so with unambiguous clarity as well, making sure that we're working on the right thing. You need to optimize the environment so that happy people serve happy customers, users, and other stakeholders. And we need to bring the whole organization on the same executive learning journey so that new executives feel supported to contribute and be a part of the direction of travel. In fact, in my research, one of my biggest findings was that the main reason why a lot of changes reverse is because when top management really do achieve success, and some of them do with change, with people and change, and they manage to transform, inverted commas, the organization. I don't like that word, but they manage to move the needle in terms of getting the organization to kind of behave in a different way and be more adaptive to market needs and so on. What I've observed is that even in the very successful case studies, they tend to roll back. And they roll back because the executives have not prepared their successors and their successors for the ways of working and the ways of thinking that are needed in order to sustain that success. Because a lot of executives are still getting taught with very old-fashioned ideas in executive MBA schools. There are some teaching really cool stuff, and I do some teaching myself on this. There are some, but there's still a trend where your replacements, if you like, as top management, they unravel your change. They unravel the change and destroy your legacy. So it's going to be crucial that not only do you go on a journey yourself as an executive, but that your potential successors are also going through that learning rigor, if you like. And I did say grow carrots. So what would you be optimizing? What are the carrots? And I start with C, creating the conditions for psychological safety and promoting job over role security. So saying, you have a job, but you need to be open to the idea that your job is going to be different. That's borrowed from the less community. Accepting uncertainty and dealing with it rather than trying to iron it out as though it's all predictable. Routinely going to see what's actually happening with teams and with customers. I say routinely, and it's important that it's so routine that the people doing the work and the customers don't feel it's like anyway not normal for you to turn up because they're so used to seeing you turn up. And you turn up so often that the truth is revealed. We can put up a show and tell some stories when there's what I call a royal tour, as in like it's like royalty is arriving, and we put the posters up before the top management arrives and so on. but really it needs to be happening so often that that's kind of that level of being precious and deferring to the hierarchy kind of goes away, that there's more openness. And this also means that you need to be a real team player by being people smart and humble and curious and hungry to learn, really curious, organizing the place so that you can declutter HR systems, maybe really have really serious conversations with HR about moving from individual performance measurement to more network of teams type measurement, maybe with some element of individual performance measurement, because some people do like that, but trying to move in the direction of teams and networks of teams. And really trying to tackle agility with agility. So it's kind of silly if you expect your agility people to come in with a PowerPoint deck. We should really be using open space and our subdata liberty and structure, something, we should be agile about this and not boring the life out of people in boardrooms. And also, we need to be really seeking out what customers really want, designing with them, experiencing, witnessing their interactions, not just trusting all these lovely dashboards that we have about Net Promoter Score and all these things, because a lot of these dashboards don't give us the full picture of what's going on. So in order to be a culture gardener, you can grow carrots. These are some practical tips that I would offer in that department. In terms of reducing the distance between teams and customers, there are two schools of thought essentially out there. And one of them is you could create a virtual organization. So the basic idea would be you might have the equivalent of something like Kanban boards or portfolio boards where people organize around those boards, and you might have people in different teams in different departments, but actually this is kind of an informal organization, and people informally work together. And even though they're formally part of some groups, they're in their day to day, they're really working with other groups, other teams. And you can do that. That's the option in the middle. The option on the left is what where a lot of companies are still stuck, where they have what I call layer of cake teams. They if you're doing software, for example, you might have back-end teams, middleware teams, front-end teams, and they're dependent on each other. There are benefits to those types of team because they're good at doing back-end, middleware, front-end, and so when we go from layer of cake teams to slice of cake teams on the right-hand side, we do lose a little bit of, guardianship, if you like, but that can be compensated by, for example, using some guidelines like from Less, for example, where you can have mentors for the back end, for example, mentors to the middleware at the back, the front end in teams, and you can have communities as well representing the legacy design of the organization. But for those of you who don't have the appetite to redesign your org, to go from layer cake teams uh, either between different layers of software or different departments and non-software, with queues bidding up between those departments. You could redesign in terms of, I guess, flight route, as I say, with flight levels or value stream type design. There are some options that are out there. There are others. You can also set up networks as well. But essentially, there's two levels of appetite that I've seen. There's like loads of options here, way over 20. But if I was to boil it all down, it would be layer cake teams, virtual organization of layer cake teams, where you're just trying to be organized. You're still the way you are, but you're just trying to artificially organize yourself around value. And then there's truly reorganized, your teams are actually aligned with the customer, and then that means that we've got less distance from the customer as well. Not everybody has the appetite for reorganization, so there are lots of options, including flight levels, for example, for kind of being the go-between, having virtual organizations. There are a variety of options out there. The thing is that what's very difficult to overcome are dependencies, and I gave a training class only yesterday on a scaling framework, and it was really apparent that dependencies are a mess. They really do almost dehumanize the workplace, because you're expecting people to deliver value, and it's really, really difficult to deliver value when actually there's so many dependencies to get through first, and there's kind of a domino effect of them. It's quite difficult. So it'd be nice to get to a place where, do you know what, each team can actually cut through the whole cake, and maybe they can even have lots of dependencies with other teams because they're so used to mobbing and pairing with each other, pairing with different people, mobbing with different people every day. Indeed, Baz, reducing dependencies is key, and it does have resistance. One of the patterns out there that's quite useful to kind of guess be a bit more gentle about this would be Nexus from Scrum.org, because what they do is they have this kind of virtual organization. They call it the Nexus integration team. I think it should really be called the Nexus coaching team. And the essential idea is that you still have layer cake teams, but you still get a slice of cake at the end of the sprint, because that virtual team is worried about how you get that slice of cake at the end of a sprint, say, for example, because they use Scrum and Nexus. And what people realize is that, maybe Tuba is asking for Mary from my team all the time. And so maybe we realize that maybe Mary should be in a different team, and is Mary okay with that? Or am I okay with that? Was Tuba okay with that? And so slowly, maybe over an 18-month period, Nexus is good at kind of nudging the organization to realizing the nonsense of dependencies. So instead of kind of going straight to a reorg, you're kind of being nudged slowly to kind of move to that place. So that's one option, Baz, but there are other ones as well. Lots of options out there. Thank you for that comment. Also, we talked about the third gap, which was executives essentially assuming, or maybe not assuming, but trying to fool us that everything's predictable and that we can give predictable plans. And I actually like one of the things that Bas Fodde said in one of his talks recently at the LESS conference, where he said that a good measurement of agility in a team could be the percentage of items that never existed before the last sprint review in a sprint. So in other words, we're working on this brand new idea that came out of the sprint review, and that kind of captures the essence of complexity in a way, because first of all, customers don't know what they want a lot of the time. A lot of the time, we don't know when they say what they want, or when they do know what they want, we don't understand really still what they want. People change their mind, life changes, business changes. Often we don't know how to do something, or maybe there is a customer satisfaction gap, but we haven't nailed how exactly to do that, and we might need to do some experiments and so on. And so, what I really like about Cynefin, it's for me, it's a leadership compass, because sometimes you know what to do. Sometimes I know how to brush my teeth. I know how to fill out a timesheet and things like that. Sometimes if there's a leak in the house, I'll need to get help. I'll need to get a plumber. Uh, if I need some legal help, maybe I need to get a lawyer. I actually did go on YouTube for the night one time when I needed legal help because I was let down by my lawyer, and I don't recommend that. But you could do lots of research as well. The complicated space is where it's kind of like the domain of experts. I feel like, when they get together, they know what they're doing, and they'll probably figure out. They might have to do some discussion, but they'll figure it out, and that work is fairly predictable. Where it gets a bit messy is when, even when the experts get together, they might go into analysis paralysis. They can't really figure out what the right thing is to do, and actually there's more unknown than known, actually. And not only maybe do we not know how to do something, we might be sure who the right customer is, what the right feature is for them, what the right interface would be, what the right price point is. There's all sorts of things that wouldn't be known, and so we need to be open to the idea of being empirical. So it's I'm oversimplifying, but essentially deciding what to do next based on what we learned last and recently, and being open to hunches as well, being open to taking a punt on something when we have a hunch about something. But also we need to be open to fresh thinking. And in this space, we'd be kind of lying really given a Gantt chart, because we don't actually know when we'll be done. There are approaches for forecasting, like probabilistic forecasting, for example, and I wrote an article about that last year on InfoQ if anybody wants to check it out, sizing and forecasting in Scrum. I won't dig into that now, but in the complex space, we do really need to embrace uncertainty. And so assuming that everything's predictable is quite dangerous and can be quite toxic actually, because we can end up cutting quality and causing more moral injury. You might have heard of technical debt, the result of shortcuts we made in the past. There's all sorts of other types of debt as well, user experience debt, all sorts of other things, shortcuts that we're taking that catch up on us eventually. And I really do love people using the Scouts rule where they leave the place tighter than they found it. They clean the kitchen, so to speak, as JB Rainsberger said. Try to clean the kitchen, but when you're in the complex space, we're working on what we're doing now. We're going to do something. We don't know what we're going to learn. We don't know what we're going to discover, and we could end up in a different place. We don't know what we're going to discover. I won't talk about chaos today, but yeah, sometimes there is chaos, and it's not all bad. Sometimes it's good. You can come up with some good ideas there as well. But I really like the idea of Cynefin as a compass to guide you, and in particular, in the middle, the A for aphoretic. C means confused. You're not even aware of which domain you're in because you don't know anything about Cynefin. But A for aphoretic or aporia, which is where you create deliberate confusion because you're not really sure. Like during COVID, I think Boris Johnson was trying to figure out what to do with the Omicron variant when it came along, and I think he was looking at the experts in the complicated space, asking would the vaccine work, and they said no. And I think he might have asked the people in the labs, will the booster work in Omicron? And they probably said we need 6 or 8 weeks or something like that. And I'm just guessing he might have gone aphoretic and said, well, I'm not really sure what to do, so let's get everybody to get the booster in December. And Whether that was a good or bad thing, I don't know, but it was an example where someone decided to do something different, and as far as I'm concerned, he brought the UK into chaos deliberately because he was trying to buy some time. So it's a very useful compass to use, and really, it's the work is predictable what's on the right hand side, but not so much on the left hand side. So we need to be open to fresh thinking, and I'm a big fan of the Plan, Do, Study, Act type loop that was popularized by Deming. I wouldn't want you to think that it was a linear loop. My adaptation would be that you would maybe enter and exit the loop wherever it's appropriate, because you might not go through every step in a say you might skip a step, or skip a couple of steps, or skip a loop even. But I think it is useful. And the other little adaptation here as well is that all the while you're doing your Plan, Do, Study, Act, maybe you should also be cultivating the environment so that you have a better environment for experimentation. So you need to also be intentional about strategy deployment. I don't have time to talk about strategy deployment today, but there are a number of options out there, and I will maybe talk about that in a subsequent talk. But you need to allow strategy to emerge. You need to have one, but you also need it to emerge as well in terms of because we're dealing with uncertainty, we don't know what we're going to discover. We do need some kind of direction of travel. This is a bigger representation of Plan, Do, Study, Act, and got a bit more text behind this as well. So my adaptation of this is that in the plan step, you observe the current condition, and then you plan your change or your test or your method or comparison methods, and then you run your experiment as per step one, and then you have a look at the evidence. Did it work? Do we meet expectations? There might be some times where experiments don't have hypotheses at all. Actually, they might be just trying something. You might have a hunch about something. But then the three typical responses to an experiment would be, well, what do we learn? Are we going to persevere, as in like we seem to be on to a good thing here, or should we maybe pivot because we've learned that actually we're not actually exactly on the right track here, or should we stop actually? And it takes a lot of courage to stop. And I have noticed that people can be prone to execution bias where they keep going like the hamsters on the wheel, persevering where the evidence is quite compelling that they should have stopped. And this is actually what I like about looking at where we are maybe every few weeks. So I think the sprint review and Scrum has some merit in that regard, not as a kind of a cycle for delivery, but more in terms of reviewing how we're doing and is this the right problem to be focusing on right now. This is an adaptation of Scrum.org's evidence-based management diagram with permission, and that's derived from Toyota Improvement and Coaching Kata from Mike Rodder. Uh, and if you look at two dimensions here, measures of progress and time, how are we doing over time? We need to plan, do, study, act to figure out what to do next, but we're doing so in a direction. We're trying to evolve in a direction. That direction isn't like a solid point in the sky, so to speak. It could change. In fact, not only could the direction of travel change, but even our steps towards it, like the rallying cry. Let's say we've got a 6 to 9 month rallying cry in that direction. We might even discover when we're doing our next step towards a target condition, we might discover that the rallying cry is wrong and that maybe the direction is wrong. So we need to be open to the idea that our goals might be wrong because in complexity, we're really evolving from the present. It's good to have some kind of direction so you're not bouncing all over the place, just being reactive to everything, but you have some kind of strategy, if you like. But you need to be open to the idea that your goals are wrong, and you should use those experiments to prove if those goals are wrong. And I often talk about kids playing football, say in a green outside my house, for example, and if they're used cardigans or jumpers as the goals, well, um, maybe they need to be open to the idea of the goalposts moving. But of course, they'd be very upset, won't they? But in product development, not only can the goalposts move, they probably should move sometimes, particularly when the evidence is compelling. So here's the attribution to Scrum.org and Mike Rodder, because that's where that diagram essentially got derived from. Not only should you be doing plan, do, study, act within your own team, there'll be a whole number of plan, do, study. There's a whole loop of plan, do, study, act going on throughout the organization, and not just that, but plan, do, study, act, cultivate. You can use other approaches. There are other ways of doing this, but some kind of an empirical way, and there'll be lots of experiments going on right throughout the organization. So I get quite worried about some roadmaps where they say, oh, we know exactly what we're going to do in Q3 2024. And we even know it's going to be September the 15th, 2024, things like that. There will be cases like that where you got externally set deadlines, but when they're arbitrarily set within the company, when we're dealing with so much uncertainty, it does trouble me a bit. And so I like top management to be educated on complexity, in particular Cynefin. And there's a lovely approach coming out of the Cynefin community as well called SGI mapping, which is really cool for strategy deployment. Maybe do a search for that on YouTube. You'll probably find Dave Snowden or one of his colleagues talking about that. Essentially, if we want to be successful in top management, the organization needs to own the change. Yes, we'll do our plan, do, study, act, and we'll need to cultivate the environment so agility can grow. But there are other things that we need to do that we haven't had time to talk about today. Like, for example, giving help and getting help, um, working on knowledge acquisition, understanding the customer, understanding agility, understanding ambidexterity, understanding product, understanding more about habits and behaviors, the behaviors that I'm exhibiting at the moment that are causing a lack of psychological safety in my networks of teams. So there are a number of models that I recommend in that department that I don't have time to talk about today, but this is something that is important. Emergent strategy and strategy deployment as well. And you can't really talk about effectiveness in an organization, I think, without optimizing flow as well. Kanban guide is about balancing efficiency, effectiveness, and predictability of the flow. So being open to all of these things is kind of what you need to really shake up the environment. So essentially, instead of it's expecting your teams to be doing all these things, you also need to be doing some of these things. And there's some heavy lifting, we give the metaphor, to be done in this department, that there will be lots of things that are kind of getting in the way of how the organization can achieve more timely, humane effectiveness. The gaps that I talked about today were culture gardening, cultivating the work environment, responsiveness to market and societal needs, and empiricism, deciding what to do next based on what we learned. But there are other topics that I'm happy to talk about in a subsequent session. For example, happy people leading to happy customers and users, not treating people as resources, and acquiring knowledge, not just for ourselves as top management, but also to prepare our successors and our successors' successors. Because what we need is to protect our legacy. If we do make wonderful changes in our organizations, really help to move the needle with the organizations to find new customers, find new products, find new markets, we need to set up our successors so that they can sustain that and even go above and beyond what we've already done. Really not having a situation where you being such a great leader, the next person suffers because you were such a great leader, maybe have to deal with some of the hangovers. So being open to the idea of actually setting up your successors for your own sake as well, because you don't want your reputation getting thrashed afterwards. I mean, Jack Welch was supposed to be the wonder guy of management while he was still working, and his name is dirt now in the management circle. So you don't want that to happen to you, right? So how can you educate your successors and successors to be ready for the new way of working, essentially? Coming soon, I'll have a talk on how we actually do this. How do we declutter? How do we energize ourselves so that we can energize others? How do we do strategy deployment in an emergent way? And how can we get real? And how do we prepare our successors? There is irony in the acronym, which you might have noticed. But when I'm talking about descaling, I'm not talking about the opposite of scaling. Consider the plaque in the extra scale that attaches to the element of a kettle when it's exposed to hard water over a number of months. And imagine someone coming along and adding vinegar into the kettle to descale that scale from the element. Simplify, declutter, refactor, make the environment more amenable, where the water can be boiled in the case of a kettle, where people can be more effective in a humane, timely way in your organization. That is the end of my talk. I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions. Thank you. I will have another version of this talk coming out very, very soon. If you're curious, keep an eye on the Lithe community on social, because there could be more talks on this at a later point. You can also find me on social media as well, on X as John Coleman IRL. You can see my link tree there as well. There's also a QR code on screen as well if you want to just grab my social links and find out a little bit more about me. It was an honor to be with you this evening, and open for more questions from you. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Siganya. More acronyms, huh? Maybe I shouldn't have added any more. Maybe we have enough acronyms. You can also check out the X Agility podcast as well. If you just go to http xagility.org. There's no HTTPS on that. It's just a redirect. Thank you, Baz. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, LinkedIn user. You can also check out my articles on InfoQ. Published 2 last year. One of them was on sizing and forecasting in Scrum, but the more interesting one relevant for this talk is how you might sometimes need to create an island of agility. The basic tenet of the talk is sometimes it can be so difficult to change an organization where you feel you almost need to blow it up, that maybe you can start something new within your organization. So if you want to check that out, that's on InfoQ as well. Thank you, Kenneth.
John, that was absolutely excellent. That was really, really good. Honestly, that's one of the best I think we've had so far. Thank you very much to everyone who's joining. If you have any questions, then please leave a comment right now. Otherwise, we'll probably end this in about a couple of minutes. In terms of the recording, it will be instantly available as soon as this live stream ends. And we can also send you the slides if you're okay with that, John.
Of course.
Perfect. If you're interested, we can send you the slides as well. If you are, then please just send a quick message with your email or DM John. You can connect with them on LinkedIn with your email, and then we can send those over to you right away.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's on SlideShare this evening. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. We can put that in the comments section of the recording actually as well to make it easy for everyone, so they can just add it. So if anyone has any questions, thank you very much, Kenneth. Thank you very much, Anil. Unless there are any questions, last chance. Otherwise, we'll be ending this stream right about in about a minute or so.
Thank you, Anil.
Any questions, then please leave them right here. Okay, looks like we haven't got any questions. I think that's everything. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending again. Again, the recording will be available and the slides will be available soon after. We'll post the link to those in the comments. Thank you again for commenting and supporting and joining. It's really, really a pleasure to have you all. And thank you very much, John, for an excellent webinar. That was fantastic.
Thank you, too. Thank you, Lithe. Thank you, Alexander.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.